Hello, we're rolling into another episode of Psych Chat here at Men's Radio Station. As usual, I talk to interesting people within psychology, mental health, and well-being. My brilliant guest for today wears many hats. He is a performance nutritionist, a sleep practitioner, and a strength conditioning coach. We have loads of things to cover. We'll talk about sleep, nutrition, movement, and habits. And these are vitally important in light of the crisis we're going through at the moment. Lee Chambers, thanks for joining me, and I'm really delighted to have you here because this is still an opportunity for us to find ways to create the most balanced version of ourselves.
Indeed, and it's a pleasure to be with the show today, Dennis.
Okay. Lee, if you could just give us a quick trajectory of your life, tell us who you are, where you're from, and how you ended up wearing these so many hats. These are all amazing jobs. So if you could just, give us a snapshot of how you ended up doing these sorts of things.
A very quick snapshot is that I'm from Preston, and I went through university and I struggled with my mental health and the transition from becoming a young man to an adult. So that kind of engaged me in wanting to understand myself better and how to perform. So I decided that I would take ownership and accountability of my own study after getting a graduate job and losing it due to the credit crunch. So that led me on a path of enlightenment and really wanting to understand how my body and how my mind worked. So every year I would do a qualification at level 4 or above to try and get that understanding. So at first it was to kind of use it for myself, to kind of improve myself, to kind of try to reach my potential in numerous different areas. And in 2014, I was unfortunate enough to lose the ability to walk, which very much changed my worldview and made me understand that I'd taken many things for granted in my life. And that ignited a passion to use my qualifications and my experience of learning to walk again and to get back on my feet and optimizing my life to get the best health outcomes that I could. That really made me think, I'd love to do this. I'd be so fulfilled if I could help other people improve their health outcomes and perform at a high level and maintain, positive levels of well-being. And that kind of led me to bring my qualifications and my experience together to deliver an integrated package of wellbeing care for people.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've obviously been through a lot of challenges, and your story is quite inspirational. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners, since this is Men's Radio Station, a lot of listeners, young men, and more mature men can actually identify with the struggles that you've been experiencing. But if you could just sort of expand more on the biggest challenges that you've encountered in your life. You've mentioned that you lost your job. You were also struggling to get support, if that's right. So far, what has been the biggest challenges in your life?
So I think the 3 biggest challenges when I look back and take a really positive reflection on difficult times. My mental health challenges at university. Mm-hmm. They were a transition point as I moved from being a child to a man, and it was quite difficult back then, 15 years ago, to kind of get the support and the awareness that's there today about what it actually means to become a man. What kind of man do you want to authentically be? And I struggled with that, to be honest. I didn't really have much direct guidance of how to unleash myself on the world as the man that I was. So that kind of led to me feeling like disconnected and not really authentic to what I wanted to be. And that, along with the transition of moving away from home and becoming, responsible for my own education, for my own cooking, for my own cleaning and all my own self-care, I actually found that quite challenging, and it did lead to me going through a period where I really struggled to engage with it all. And it's very difficult to speak to people about that when you've not really been taught how to question yourself well and how to reflect and find answers. It's natural if you've not kind of hone those skills as a child, you tend to repress your feelings and emotions and get frustrated with your thoughts and really connect to them in a negative way, which kind of took me in a bit of a negative spiral. And I can see now, looking back, it was just in many ways that I was underdeveloped as a man, and didn't have that awareness and responsibility of, connecting to my authentic self and being myself. So I kind of feel that I've managed to harness that as I've grown, and through that period of suffering, it actually made me stronger over a period of time, and it made me more willing to have deep conversations with people close to me, and willing to be vulnerable and share my story with other people. I think that fortified me then for when I went into the workplace. And I'd failed the year at university due to my mental health struggles, but I managed to be resilient and bounce back and take the year again and pass it, and then move through towards graduation, where I then managed to graduate and get myself onto a graduate scheme at a national bank in the finance pathway. So that was really positive. That unfortunately, that was 2007, and 6 months in, they told me that due to redundancies above me, they weren't able to put me through the training that they'd advised that I would be able to do, and they weren't able to promote me or really move me beyond the base level graduate position until the climate changed. So again, as a 21-year-old man, that was quite difficult to take. But looking back, that really was a big turning point for me, because that led to me starting my first company after deciding I couldn't rely on a corporate business to, fund me through my life. I would have to try and harness that myself and, take ownership of my own earnings, but also my education, understanding that I can't rely on a company for professional qualifications. So why don't I find a way to make enough money and flexibility with time to keep building my own portfolio of professional qualifications and be the person that I want to be, rather than move through the world as an employee and sit in a job and let them serve me, rather than me saying, what do I want? I'll design it and I'll go and get it.
Mm-hmm. There are actually two things that I've identified from your experiences. I can see that you struggle a bit with your identity crisis, and you were also struggling with independence, but you managed to shift these two elements into resilience and into positivity and then social support, which eventually led you to launch your own company, which is really admirable. And I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners would be inspired with this. But as a man who navigated with these struggles with mental health experiences and looking for support, can you give us some advice on how to find purpose and path in life? Because clearly, based from your experiences and how you managed to flip your experience, you clearly managed to find purpose and path in life. So just give a bit of advice.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it takes the ability to sit down and reflect on what the underlying themes are behind the things that you've done, the challenges that you've been through, the connections and friends that you've made over the years. And I think that now, in the unfortunate situation where we're isolated and under lockdown due to the virus, for a lot of people, now would be a perfect time, as the world has slowed down a bit and there's more chance to sit there and reflect and really, go a bit deeper. I mean, this is something I found really interesting with some of my friends and some of my clients over the past few weeks, is that, especially from a male point of view and perspective, suddenly a lot of the topics that we discuss at a very surface level, such as sport or music or entertainment, where, you stood in a group, you stood shoulder to shoulder, you're chatting about what the latest scores are, and you never really have that deep, meaningful conversation where people are willing to be open and vulnerable. You're actively listening to each other, looking at each other and actually discussing. I kind of feel that now is a real opportunity, because not only do you have the time and the space to reflect and really kind of think about who am I, who do I want to become, kind of like look and start to see, why have all these things happened over my life? For sometimes the suffering brings massive growth, and sometimes comfort brings no growth at all. So it's a real chance to kind of not ruminate on the past and think, oh, things have been difficult, but actually to, positively reflect and think, what's happened to me? How can I take those mistakes and those challenges and kind of pick them apart like an experiment and see what worked and what didn't, and what can I learn from that? And try not to attach emotion to it. Just try and look at it quite practically, like most men find themselves able to do if they kind of go in with that mindset. But also now is a great time to engage the people who you've got connection with and really just openly and honestly speak to them. It's quite likely to be digitally, but one of the powerful elements of digital is you can kind of be both in a relative level of comfort in your own home and actively speak to each other across a screen. But don't just discuss surface level stuff, because people are now more compassionate and open in these times of crisis. People are asking, how are you? How is it affecting you? Is there anything I can do to help you? It's a breeding ground of innovation and collaboration and openness. And suddenly clients and friends are starting to be more vulnerable. They're telling me things that, they've kept inside. They've never told me before. It's interesting when, you've got a friend who you've known for many years and they're starting to open up more than they would before. And it's a real opportunity at this, point in our lives to really look and say, deep inside, what's our purpose? What missions would we like to fulfill? Are we heading in the right direction? Are we feeling that, aligned with who we want to be? And if not, start to ask ourselves some questions to try and make that more clear and get some clarity on, what kind of man, what kind of woman, who are you? Who do you want to be? And who do you need to become to be what you want to be?
That's really a positive message that you convey there. You tell us not to ruminate on the past and find ways to better yourselves and grow, which actually reminds me of a recent interview that I've carried out on YouTube. For the benefit of those listening, because aside from hosting this show on Men's Radio Station, I also run a YouTube channel where I interview people pretty much the same format. And just the other day I was talking to a lecturer from University of Edinburgh, and he emphasized just pretty much like what you said, Lee. He emphasized the importance of looking for the positive aspects of what you've gone through, and he shared to us this psychological concept called post-traumatic growth. Like when you've experienced something negative in the past, you can actually harness it to find positivity and to find growth. And I think you're a real example of someone who manifests post-traumatic growth, and I'm really grateful for you for taking time to share to our listeners your story about positivity and post-traumatic growth here at Men's Radio Station. Now, earlier, Lee, you just mentioned about losing the ability to walk. To me, that is really unimaginable, and I wouldn't have an idea how it is to lose the ability to walk. And I'm sure some of our listeners could probably relate to this in one way or another. But could you just tell us more about that experience, that traumatizing experience?
Okay, yes. So it was in 2014, and I was 29. I was recently married. My son was 18 months old. My wife was 6 months pregnant. We'd bought our first house, and I was doing a bit of work in elite sport and running a small video game business. And so in many ways, life was ticking along, and I kind of got myself into a place where, I felt comfortable and I was happy in myself, and I was playing team sports with friends and keeping active and trying to look after myself the best that I could. And over the course of 5 days, I was unfortunate enough for my immune system to attack the connective tissue in my joints, which locked both my knees, my right shoulder and my left wrist in place, and led me to being in a position where I had to go into A&E, taken by my mother-in-law, because I was trying to be a man and think, oh, it'll be fine. I've been to the doctors and they've given me some corticosteroids. I'm sure they'll unlock themselves soon. But no, unfortunately, I was then taken straight from A&E straight through to a ward, and I spent a month in Blackburn Hospital, which was a challenging time. I was in quite a lot of pain, and the swelling on my joints was significant. They did a lot of testing to try and deduce exactly what was causing it. But it was a real challenging time. Looking back, I couldn't shower myself. I couldn't prepare food. So I went from completely independent, playing, socializing, doing exactly what I wanted whenever I wanted to within the limits of my family, to suddenly being restricted to a hospital bed and being wheeled around a hospital and not able to stand up.
Mm-hmm.
It was an incredibly challenging time, and I am so grateful now looking back that not only was I able to kind of get through that, but I had a massive cone of care. My wife, even though she was 6 months pregnant, was going to work and then coming after work to shower me and to bring me food and to look after me. And that meant that she moved in with my mother and father-in-law, and they looked after my son so she could come and help me. And I just had a lot of support at that time. And I lay there at times thinking, I'm grieving a little bit for my mobility here. It's going to be a difficult time. But at the same time, I was there thinking, I'm so grateful that I've got people to help me. And not only are they helping me now in the time of crisis, but they're also going to be there to support me throughout my recovery. So after a month, I managed to go home, and it was very, very challenging, adapting all the elements of my life that I'd become used to and adapting it for my very, very limited mobility at the time. And I went through walking rehab and intensive physio with a lot of hydrotherapy. That really helped because I couldn't upper body support myself as much due to the damage to my shoulder and my wrist. But after 6 months, I was back up on my feet. And really, in a lot of ways, it was my mindset through it. I took a really, powerful decision to say, I don't want to sit here in a wheelchair and rely on my medicine. I want to take ownership of my health outcomes, and I want to optimize every part of my life to be as good as it can so that my health can be as good as it can. And I understood that having a chronic disease, you will be controlling it for the rest of your life. But if you actually do take that accountability and say, I'm going to do everything I can and experiment with myself, using my qualifications and my experience to, get to the best place that I can be, then really I will be a bigger person than before I was ill. So that for me was really important. And I think the real driving factor, after a year is when I managed to walk a mile unaided. And that was a massive, point in time where I really felt that, I'd managed to achieve and come back stronger than I was before. But my big driver was my wife was 6 months pregnant and my daughter was born a few months after I came out of hospital. And I said to myself every morning when I woke up, by the time she's walking, I'll be walking too, and I'll be out in the garden running around with my children. And that power of why ignited me to push myself to the point where I was able to, recover. And I'm in a great position now 5 years later where, having optimized my nutrition, my sleep, my movement, and experimented for years to find out exactly what works for me. In June, I'll be medication free.
Well, what's the name of your wife, if you don't mind me asking?
It's Louise.
Louise, so if Louise is listening right now, just say a massive thank you to her, and I really commend Louise for the support that she's provided you, even though she's at the height of her pregnancy. That's really remarkable.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I mean she's a remarkable woman,
mm,
and at the moment she's homeschooling my son
mm,
and my daughter. So a big shout out to you, my dear, and thank
mhm.
you for everything that you've done for me.
Thank you, Louise. And these actually your experience, of losing the ability to walk and struggling with your identity and struggling with independence. These are life experiences which essentially contributed on you becoming a coach, and that's another reason why I invited you to come here at Men's Radio Station to shed some lights and things that are we're grappling right now in light of the coronavirus. And I just want to move the conversation to this crisis that we're going through at the moment. For those of us who are you know trying to adapt with this, what advice would you give to someone who has just started working remotely from home?
Okay, so I mean a lot of the advice that I give in regard to this transition, because for so many people it's not been a transition that's an intention's been set and some goals and some training's been given, and they've then been able to acclimatize into it. For many people it's been right, okay, so by the end of the week you're going to be doing the job that you've been doing in an office for 5 days a week at home for 5 days a week. So it's definitely a challenge. But some of the big points I've been taking and helping clients with is to try and build a schedule and a structure and a particular environment for working from home, so you can segment your day and your psychological attachment to certain places into what the tasks that you carry out there. So naturally, our homes are mostly designed around relaxing, eating, living, and sleeping, and not really tailored by our own desires and designs to educate and to work, unless we already work from home. So what we kind of start with the beginning of your work day, so that connecting to a work day. So through the process, we suggest that you actually get dressed for work. So this doesn't necessarily need to be your exact work uniform or your exact work wear. But if you're trying to start working in your pajamas, we have an attachment to our clothes psychologically, and we psychologically attach our pajamas to the element of sleeping, to the
Mm-hmm.
element of being relaxed, and it's not conducive to then take that attachment and sit there and try to start working. So what we suggest is you get dressed in something that gives you the feeling that you're at work. This can be slightly more casual than the suit and tie that you might normally go to the meeting in,
Mm-hmm.
but it's your attachment to the clothes which frame how you feel and how you confer the benefits. So if
Mm-hmm.
it feels like work wear to you, then that's perfect for you to then wear to get your mindset into that working place.
That's actually something that I could relate to. Because right now, usually when I go to men's radio station, every Monday, I'm wearing a blazer. And actually, even though we can't see each other, I'm actually wearing a blazer right now. So I think that's really a sensible advice. Just to get into the field that you're still working, that it's not really any different from, the way you would usually get into work. Now, earlier, Lee, you mentioned that your wife Louise is homeschooling your children, and you're working from home. What I want to ask you in particular is how do you handle navigating relationship when the whole family, such as yours, is working and educating in the same environment? Because I'm pretty sure there are quite struggles in that. Like you're confined in one place. I don't know. We're probably doing this for 2 weeks now, and it feels a bit weird. So, do you have any tips for us, especially for families who find this a bit weird? And
Oh,
it's really
definitely.
weird. It's not a bit weird. It is weird.
Yeah, so there's people who are in relationships where they've got families at home. There's people who flat share with friends and colleagues, and now they're all together for the first time. So the advice that I've been giving out is you really need to set very clear boundaries with each other and make sure they're communicated, because you need to respect each other's work day.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy at home to have a conversation about anything, but I actually suggest with my clients to say, would you phone each other at work to discuss this? If not, just send it as a message and you can discuss it later over dinner or after the working day. And it's definitely as well, you need to kind of design and select a particular area where you can work without distraction, so that the other person knows if you go to work in that particular corner of that particular room, that you're on a call, you're working on a task where you've connected deeply to it and you can't be disturbed. You need to make sure that you kind of communicate that, but you're also flexible, as you might have to share this space with each other. And it's quite important for, especially in relationships, for you not to start to blur the lines where you almost become each other's workmate. It's important to kind of set those boundaries and possibly create a WhatsApp group to simulate office chat that we're missing out on that social interaction, but kind of find someone in your industry to bounce ideas and problems off. They'll have more of an understanding. Maybe join a mastermind or find a mentor or join an online group of people who do what you do, because they'll resonate more with the challenges that you're having in a work sense. Anyway, it's very easy when you're both working from home for the atmosphere to get cloudy with frustrations around work, and really you need to make sure you're connecting on a relationship level and not just becoming each other's workmate where you complain about your work to each other. And I think the other things that I quite often highlight are making sure that you're both flexible with your household duties. Both be flexible with the homeschooling where you can be. Don't just leave all the housework for one person because you're both at home. That'll cause tension and conflict that make it more difficult when you're isolated and you're in that environment together. And just to get outside and exercise where you can. You're limited to once a day, but if you do it together, that can be a great time to connect and get out of that claustrophobia and being under people's toes. And then finally, to just make sure that you have like a place where you can disconnect in the evening, somewhere where you remove the items from work, put your work stuff in a dedicated place where it can almost sit there for a digital sunset in the evening while you reconnect with your family and reconnect with people who that you want to speak to in a non-work setting, because it's so important that you psychologically disconnect from work at the end of the day so you can connect to relaxing. And that's incredibly important, because then you'll be able to connect more strongly to work the following day.
And these are really incredible, useful advice in light of the corona crisis that we're going through at the moment. Now, as a coach, what I want to hear from you is, have you actually seen the difference, the way communicate since the virus transformed into a crisis?
In terms of people communicating, people have become more open, definitely more willing to speak about how they feel and start to connect with their emotions more. People being, more collaborative. People are now asking each other how they feel. People are asking each other, how are your family? How is your business? Is there anything I can do to help you? And it's suddenly, people are becoming more community focused, starting to look at, instead of looking at the bigger picture in, microscopic detail, they're now looking quite with a wider scope, but closer to home. So people are starting to really tend to their personal connections and actually have these deep conversations. The virus has forced us to slow down as a society and to stop being so busy and so manic, and it's actually started to make us intentional with our communication. So we're actually checking in with people with the intention to find out, how are they doing? Are they okay? Can we help them? Can they help us? Businesses are coming together and offering services to help others in times of need where the financial ability is not there, and people are going out of the way to find the more vulnerable in society and find frameworks and designs and ways to help them. And I honestly feel that it's great because our culture shifted. The clap for the NHS, that was amazing just to hear that. If you'd have suggested that 6 months ago, many people would have just laughed at the idea. And that just shows exactly how much we're coming together through the crisis. As human beings are generally wired to do, when resources become shorter, we're able to collaborate easier, we're more trusting of others, and suddenly we connect, especially to the people close to us, on such a deeper level. And we've not really been through a challenge like this in many, many years. And I think that the new normal that will come once the virus has moved on and we get back to living the lives how we intend to without restriction, that the culture will have changed and people will be more open, more receptive, and hopefully communities will be, refreshed and rebuilt, and the more traditional element of, knowing your neighbours and knowing your local businesses and supporting local people, hopefully that will stay, and there'll be much more respect and much more compassion and empathy for others. And I hope that will continue onwards for the future.
And brilliant advice, Lee. Actually, I just wish that our paths cross earlier, because I actually compiled a video from mental health professionals, from people like yourself, and asking them if they could, send me a minute-long video. It's actually out on YouTube now, and these are really, great advice. I wish I have known you earlier, so I could have included your video. But those are really sensible advice. And aside from working on mental health and well-being, a great component of what you do is also on the physical aspect. So what I want to find out is, coming from someone as a coach, do you have any tips for us on how we can stay physically fit and active with limited resources right now that we have? If I may just share, because I'm a freelancer, mainly I'm a content creator. I run a blog, I run a YouTube, and from Thursday to Friday I just work from home. And it's really a big deal for me, to go out, to go for a walk, to go for a run, and take the train. And because of the coronavirus, because of the lockdown, these are things that have, I can't do this anymore. So give us some tips to be physically fit and active.
Okay, so in terms of the current lockdown, we have the provision to leave the house to exercise once. So definitely a big thing is to try and maximize that. And wherever you are at the level where you would run 10K or the level where you would walk for a few miles, it's incredibly important to utilize that one opportunity we've got to get ourselves outside into external environments, to stimulate our senses with the sun and the air hitting our cheeks, and just to really refresh ourselves. And we're designed to move, so it's that element really where just stepping and connecting with the ground, momentum and progress of walking or running outside. But in all truth, that's not for everyone. This is the perfect opportunity to leverage the fact that now there's so many online resources for doing things like yoga, bodyweight exercises, routines that you can stream through video services or on the television. You can follow different programs, and you can even utilize lots of different things in your house. So, for example, I've got a client who decided to use the steps of his backyard to climb the equivalent of Snowdon. So that was so he was up and down those steps over a few thousand times to equivalent climbing. And it's a real time to get innovative and creative and think, what else can I do? Got another friend who ran 5K in his backyard, 5 kilometers, by going from one side to the other. It took him half an hour. And yeah, is it as much fun as running out in the wilderness on a trail run? Possibly not, but if you're going to keep yourself physically active, and that is massively important to keep our physical activity levels up during this time, because in a lot of ways, exercising, it's almost like taking a little bit of Ritalin and a little bit of Prozac. It gives us a mood boost. It keeps us fit and healthy, and that mood boost is so important for keeping our mental health and well-being boosted through what is a challenging time, as isolation can, if it's allowed to, spiral us downwards in terms of our mental health and put us in a bit of a cycle where we can start to feel a bit depressed and a bit anxious given everything that's going on in the world. So it's really important to find a way, and it's about finding what works for you. Like, going on a run is not for everyone. Doing yoga in the front room is not for everyone, but there's always a way that you can find some sort of activity that you enjoy and utilize your house, your yard, your garden, and the space around you to design a way to do it. And when you've got the time now to actually sit and think about that, it's a great time to see what you've got in those cupboards, to see what's hanging about in the garage, and just try, experiment, and find a new routine which works for you and you enjoy it.
Yeah, you could also clean your room.
Exactly. There's a interesting amount of involuntary activity that you actually get from doing a spring clean, your gardening, and your housework. That movement is quite often forgotten about, but it's actually, if you do some quite strenuous work, it's a really good way to keep yourself active.
Exactly. Now, of course, this is just one aspect of you do, because as I said during the introduction, you wear many hats, and another thing that you specialize on is sleep. Okay, so I want to move on to another thing that you focus on. So, how important is sleep as part of our well-being strategy, based from your experience?
So, based from my experience, it's actually the cornerstone. It's the real fundamental aspect of our well-being and our mental health. Because, quite simply put, if you don't sleep effectively and your sleep quantity or your quality is poor, then all of a sudden it affects your hormone levels, which make it challenging to eat well. It affects your focus and your attention. You don't really feel like training and exercising very much if you've not slept well. And your productivity tends to fall. You struggle to keep focus on your tasks at work, and everything just feels a lot more difficult if we don't get a good night's sleep. So really, in many ways, it's vital that we focus on our sleep and we're intentional in trying to optimize it and to find what works for us by designing a really positive sleep environment to sleep in, especially as now we're sleeping in the same building as we're probably working, educating, relaxing, socializing, and communicating in.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Lee, I just want to ask if you can give us some tips on how to get better sleep, because actually I'm one of those people that I keep on hearing that you shouldn't really take your phone with you because it's a disruption for healthy sleeping, but I take my phone with me. I just scroll on Twitter because I'm a big fan of Twitter. And sometimes I just realize it's already 2 in the morning, it's already 3 in the morning, and I haven't slept yet. So can you give us some tips on how to sleep more healthy?
Yeah, so it generally starts with the environment. So if we wear pajamas, we should make sure they're comfortable and they help regulate our temperature. And it's very much bespoke because we all sleep at a slightly different temperature. But again, if your pajamas are psychologically attached to you sleeping, so it's important to make sure that you only really wear them for sleeping, so that attachment remains. And you need to find the perfect temperature for your room. And in this day of thermostats and radiators, we can actually control the exact temperature our room is. So we need to find a way to get that level and get that temperature, an exact temperature that works for us, because our sleep is affected by our ability to regulate our body temperature. And if we get too hot or too cold, it affects our sleep quality and interrupts our cycles. So it's about combining your bedding, your pajamas, and the heat of your room, also taking into consideration anyone else who also sleeps in that room, to try and find a balance so that your core body temperature can stay nice and stable through the night, so you get a really powerful quality of sleep.
Okay.
So,
What about having a nap? Should we try having a nap in the morning and in the afternoon?
I mean, we are, as creatures, we're polyphasic creatures, so we're designed to sleep twice, and we're the only mammal that decides to not do that. And even the ancient Romans knew that we were polyphasic, and that's why they designed the hour called sexta, which has become siesta in Southern Europe. So we're actually designed to sleep twice, but napping's quite a personal thing as well. If you can nap for 10 to 20 minutes in the afternoon, it effectively cleans your brain and you'll wake up feeling refreshed. And if you can do that, it's excellent. And with the increased flexibility with remote working, I would recommend it to anyone who can. But there's lots of people out there who actually really struggle with napping, because in a lot of ways it's been ingrained out of our circadian rhythm over the years, because as soon as you start nursery and move through to school, you don't have that mid-afternoon chance to have a small element of recuperation. And there's a reason why we all have that dip in the early afternoon. It's because naturally we were designed to have a small period of sleep to refresh us at that point. So I would recommend anyone who can nap to try and build a 10 to 20 minute nap in the afternoon. You don't really want to go beyond 20 minutes unless you're able to go to 90, because then what will happen is you'll wake up in the middle of a sleep cycle and you'll feel pretty groggy initially.
I think that's what they call power nap, is it?
Yeah, so that's what they call a power nap. And that 10 to 20 minutes, it gives you a rejuvenative cycle that really regenerates you and allow you to tackle the afternoon with, increased vigor. And again, it's important just to buffer that by not doing it too close to your bedtime. So if you do it in the early afternoon, you'll be absolutely fine and it won't affect your evening sleep. And a lot of the athletes have considerable afternoon naps to regenerate so they can keep performing at such a high level as they do. So say Roger Federer, Kobe Bryant, they were sleeping 11 to 12 hours a day to perform at the level that they did. And that is testament to the fact if you want to perform at a high level, then you need to really consider your sleep, but also add naps in there as well to make sure that you're able to go really deeply into the tasks that you need to do.
And those are really great, insights and tips about, having a healthy sleep. But of course, that's just one thing that you look after, that you focus on as a coach, because you also work on nutrition. You also help people, eat sensibly. So just bringing that conversation to that aspect of the work that you do. Can you just talk to us? How can we deal with our own nutrition?
Yeah, so I work in the area of performance nutrition, which really looks at how we can increase your performance and increase your well-being through the food and the drink that you consume. So a big element of what I do surrounds the fact that we all are bespoke in our nutritional needs. So a meal plan that works for one person or a diet that works for another won't necessarily work for you. We all have an individual microbiome and we all have a different enzyme makeup. And in the bigger picture, our epigenetic expression is all different. So in terms of nutrition, the biggest thing is to really put a lab coat on and start to experiment with what you eat. Look at your diet, consume things, record it, and start to link that to how you actually feel at the time, 30 minutes after, 2 hours after. And by doing that, we start to get our acuity up to how what we eat affects how we feel, both physically and mentally. And we start to see that some foods really energize us, some foods we tolerate, and some foods, they really drain us. And it's about connecting to really what works for you, because nutrition, it's such a young science. If you kind of take surgery, for example, well, the Egyptians, the Romans, the Greeks were practicing surgery. It's only been 120 years ago that we even started looking at the nutrition of our food. So if you extrapolate that on a timeline, it's the equivalent of nutrition today is the equivalent of surgery in the 1600s, at which point they were still chopping a leg off because it looked a bit suspect. So the science is very young, and what that means is you can cherry pick studies for any diet plan or any nutritional belief and say there's evidence here that it's correct that you just eat meat or you just eat plants or you only eat stuff that's liquid or that you only eat stuff raw. And it's like, okay, and that's fine, and you will be able to have a study that says that you're right, but there's then 100 studies that say that that's not correct either, because it's in such a young stage. So there's a lot of belief systems in nutrition, and belief systems are great because they help people stay consistent and they restrict what people can eat. So they look like they work for keeping your weight controlled. And almost every diet works on the same principle of eating less sugar and eating more fiber. That's why they also appear to work. But they're designed to give you a system which is difficult to replicate when you're not part of that collective.
Which actually, sorry.
Yeah, it all really links back to finding what works for you and then designing your own diet plan. One that energizes you, one that gives you the vitality to then go and live your life and really not think about it so much about beliefs and is this right, and it's because we don't want food to take over your life. We just want to find what works and help you do more of that.
Well, which actually brings me to my next question. You mentioned that there could be a lot of resources that would be compatible to your own belief system, depending on what you're trying to believe in when it comes to nutrition. So could you just recommend to us trustworthy resources, especially for those people who want a starting point to eat more healthily and to eat better?
I would definitely recommend a website called Precision Nutrition. It's run by Dr. John Berardi. Now, he's a Canadian nutritionist and dietitian, and of all the advice that I've seen over the years, he disconnects the emotive beliefs of food, and he disconnects a lot of the trends and really just looks at things. He's got a small team who look at things. They make it actionable without all the headlines that pull people in because they're clickbait-ish and they're designed to get people reading. And unfortunately, if you search for good nutrition on a search engine, there's millions and millions of results and an awful lot of conflicting views and a lot of utter nonsense, if I'm honest. But yeah, Precision Nutrition has got a lot of resources. They actually run nutrition qualifications themselves, which are accredited by the AFN and lots of authoritative nutritional bodies across the world. And everything is evidence backed, but they actually show the conflicting studies and actually look at things they don't make bold statements. They kind of explain that this is what we believe at this current period in time. Nutrition is young, we're still learning, but if you follow these actionable steps, you'll be closer, but you need to experiment. And they also take that very much personalized view. You've got to find what works for you. You can't be spoon-fed nutrition, or you'll be told something that was designed by somebody else or what somebody else believes.
And of course, these are all important. We talk about sleep, we talk about nutrition, and we talk about exercise. But fundamentally, I think what really underpins your mental health and well-being is down to habits. Okay, so I want to tap into this component of your work because you also, as a coach, I understand that you also work in helping people improve their habits. So just as a starting point, can you just tell us why is it important to establish habits?
Yeah, it's really important because what we kind of find is with these physical health developments that we try and implement, the biggest challenge is actually they're integrated. So they all help each other. But to help someone, say, just on the sleep is not as effective as helping them across the board. So if you can help people to build habits and create a mindset of incrementally improving things bit by bit, it really, really helps them stay consistent, getting a little bit better and implementing these new elements into their lives. So what we do is we work with clients to set up a framework where they can very slowly build new habits and rewire ones that aren't serving them at the moment. And that kind of works around the basis that habit creation it can be challenging, but it can be systemized as well. And really, to kind of get people to stay consistent making these changes, it's important to connect the habits together, but also to make these new habits quite small to start with. So it's quite often what happens when people set New Year's resolutions. They set a really big, ambitious goal, and then they don't trace it back and smash it into lots of little pieces so they can do a little bit each day. They just look at that massive statue and think, oh, okay, it's going to be quite a challenge to get here. So it's about taking that big goal and smashing it into a lot of pieces, so that you can then take these little pieces and can do a little piece every day. So like, say we want to get people walking more. Well, that actually starts with small things such as putting an exercise outfit out so you can see it, so it's there. Because for some people, going on a long walk is just like, to expect them to do that every day straight away, it's a big ask. But can you make it more simple? So can you just put your clothes out, exercise clothes on your bed in the morning, so that at dinner time you can come up and there'll be a reminder. So you're reminded. You just need to walk around the block. So it's small, it's easy. You can start to be consistent with it. And you can start to say, well, why don't you, say, put a wall calendar up? And every time you go on your walk around the block, put a little mark on it. And then it becomes more visible and you start to feel rewarded, and you start to kind of feel that, you're achieving and making progress. And it's much easier to get people to make these changes to the nutrition, to the sleep, to the fitness, when they kind of connect the fact that, well, if I just do a little bit here and a little bit there, then these marginal incremental gains, they actually compound quite quickly, and suddenly you can attach these habits to each other. So we quite often use it in morning routines, where we'll advise people first thing in the morning when they get up, instead of checking your phone, because that puts you straight into somebody else's agenda and someone else's world, is to just go and wash your face and go and get yourself a drink of water and hydrate. And people think, oh, that's easy, we can do that. And once they spent 2 weeks actually doing that, they find, actually, yeah, it's really easy to do that. So then we say, well, after you've had that drink, meditate for 10 minutes. And they start to connect the things together. Once they've threaded that together, you can say, after you've meditated, why don't you listen to a positive podcast for 10 minutes? And then when they've embedded that, move that on to things like maybe do 10 minutes yoga or walk around the block. And you can actually stack a morning routine of, 6 really positive habits together over the course of a few months. And that can change someone's life. It's amazing.
And is that your morning routine, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so my morning routine is wake up, wash my face, have a drink, meditate, listen to a positive podcast or audio book for 10 minutes.
Or men's radio station.
Yep, definitely. Men's radio station, well recommended. And then I will read, journal for 10 minutes and do 10 minutes exercise. And then I will sort my children's breakfast out and give them a hug.
Cool. And you mentioned earlier about, consistency and how it impacts rewiring habits. So I'm just wondering, how can we actually be more consistent in rewiring our habits?
Okay. So quite often it comes to connecting to our purpose more so. So when we've got a really good and strong, clear idea of the direction that we want to go in, and that kind of then fuses more into our identity and the person that we believe that, we want to be. Because when we kind of want to be that person, we're much more likely to do the consistently positive habit rather than the negative habit. and that then allows us to, have the things that we want to be. So in a lot of ways, it's about helping people get the mindset of growth and understanding that, these one small action, it's not just, it doesn't just affect this moment, because people tend to think, oh, well, if I just do this one thing, yeah, it's not great, but it doesn't matter. But your life is built of your tens of thousands of decisions over the years, and where you're at today is actually a reflection of all those decisions you've made over your lifetime. And it only takes for you to swing to more positive decisions than negative ones for you to start to move towards where you want to be. And I do quite a lot of work with helping people understand that if you want to be this kind of person, you can be, but you need to start being that person today, and you'll gradually become the person that you want to be. But you need to live that today, and you need to really connect and dial down on the fact that, yeah, there are challenges in our lives, and we have to look at what we want and rub it up against reality. But actually, if you want to be a certain way, start being that way today.
I think that is really a powerful message, that what our listeners could pick upon. And I'm sure you've got loads of things to share, not just about habits, but also about nutrition, also about health, mental health, and well-being. But for those of who are listening, can you just tell us where can we learn more about you? I understand you've also got a company, so this is the perfect time to tell us what you do in about 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I run Essentialise Workplace Wellbeing, and we focus on bringing in all the elements that I've described today, such as the nutrition, the sleep, the habits, the mindset, and the movement, into companies and into businesses to really help people get the most out of their careers, but also to have more time and energy to do what they love to do outside of work. So you can find out more. We've got a blog at essentialise.co.uk, and we also do individual coaching for entrepreneurs, small business owners, and people who are really looking to get closer to the potential, to connect to the purpose, and to really try to move through life in a positive way. And we can help you do that through coaching, through training. And to be honest, there's lots of information out there, but we kind of help you navigate that world of information to find the bits that really matter, to find the bits that are interesting, and also just to help you connect a bit more to the psychology of understanding your thoughts, your feelings, why you believe what you do, and why you behave the way that you do.
So this is really an interesting company. So again, for the benefit of our listeners, that's Essentialise, www.essentialise.co.uk. Now we've got a few minutes left, so I just want to take this as an opportunity to remind our listeners of a few reminders. Again, you're listening to Psych Chat here at Men's Radio Station, and you've just heard about balancing, finding a balance within ourselves, and that our guest is Lee Chambers of Essentialise. Now, if you happen to miss this episode, you can always dip in again to our website. That's www.mensradiostation.com, and the episodes are also available on SoundCloud. And for those of you who are listening, will probably know more about my work. But if it's your first time, I run a website called PsychReg, so it's www.psychreg.org, and it's pretty much the same like what you're listening to Men's Radio. I talk about psychology, I talk about mental health and well-being. And more recently, I launched a podcast where, as I've mentioned earlier, it's pretty much the same format. I talk to interesting people like Lee Chambers, just to get the insights and understand what their trajectory in life in relation to what they're doing. And I've also compiled this into a book. You can learn more about my book by visiting my website, www.dennis.psychreg.org. It's been a lovely episode of Psych Chat here at Men's Radio Station. Lee Chambers, you've gave us insightful tips and advices on how to better cope with the crisis that we're going through at the moment. Again, very thank you for joining here at Men's Radio Station.
It was a privilege, Dennis.
Okay, so until then, I'll meet you again next week for another episode of Psych Chat here at Men's Radio Station. So thanks for tuning in, and do look after yourself. Take care. We're all in this together. We will survive coronavirus.